Oh, yeah. Is that the best sound in the world? I'm going to sound like I'm talking to myself because neither of you guys are on the mic, but welcome to episode 15 of Lift Talk. Now, I am on my own. Well, sort of on my own. I've got Luke and Chris here, but they don't have microphones, so it's going to sound like I'm talking to myself, which is pretty weird. And I have not ever done a solo podcast before, and I wanted you both here so that I felt less weird about it. So thank you, boys, for coming, and Happy New Year to everyone. Today I'm going to do a Q&A, but before I get to the Q&A, I'm going to do some news real quickly. So obviously about, how long ago now? 6 weeks ago now, the APU put a memo out to all of their members announcing their de-affiliation with the IPF. Obviously, this came at a huge shock to everyone because, you know, everyone who had just done state championships was expecting to do nationals, who were expecting to have a chance at going to world championships this year. And, you know, in the last 6 weeks, people have banded together to create a new federation, which just a couple of days ago announced its official affiliation with the IPF. So that's called the Australian Powerlifting Alliance. And I've been a part of the group of people working on some of the stuff, which is really cool. So shout out to all those people who have helped get things back underway after the disappointing announcement from the APU. There will be more stuff coming out very, very soon about the specific details of the federation, the affiliate clubs, what the competition calendar is going to look like, and all that stuff. But the first order of business is like, you know, shoring up the constitution and, you know, getting all the paperwork sorted and organizing open nationals. I'm not going to give any details away because none of it's been finalized, but it is happening and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be in early March. So the funny thing about the APU announcement that I thought I should mention, because this is hilarious and just the most APU thing ever. And now I can actually say stuff like this without the fear of being banned because I am no longer a member. But in the notice, they said something to the effect of, we bid farewell to international competition, which I, you know, at the time was like, okay, fair enough. But then only a couple of weeks after that, they've now affiliated with an international federation that no one has ever heard of in their life called the WDPFP. Wait, the WDFPF, the world famous WDFPF, which is hilarious. So, yeah, exciting stuff for Australian powerlifting. I think I'm certainly not in the minority here in thinking that it's actually a blessing in disguise for the APU to give away the IPF affiliation and allow someone more competent to take over. So yeah, that's exciting. The other big news is news in my life, in my family's life, with the addition of my son. Mr. Milo Jordan Hayes was born on the 1st of December. He's a perfect little man. And no, he's not named after Milo of Croton, but he is named after Michael Jordan. So just like Summer, our daughter, Chrissy picked the first name or came up with the first name, and then I eventually fell in love with it and I got to pick the middle name. So Summer's named after James Harden and LeBron James, and Milo is named after Michael Jordan for their middle names, which I think is pretty cool. So I wanted to talk a smidge about New Year's resolutions because obviously we are now in 2024. There'll be a lot of new people in the gym, probably less so with powerlifting gyms because, you know, we don't have huge membership bases in our gyms, but there will always be new people popping up. And particularly if you are someone who trains in a commercial gym, there's going to be heaps of new people popping up or just old members coming back to the gym. And my first piece of advice is don't be a dick to these people. You know, everyone started their fitness journey somewhere, and, you know, just because they may not know what they're doing or they may be taking up space that you feel like you have a right over, which you don't. It's a public gym or private membership, whatever, but everyone has the same right to all the equipment that you do. So don't be a dick to them. But if you are someone out there who has some New Year's resolutions, my advice is to start small and focus on building habits as opposed to trying to get to the goal immediately. We see a lot of the reason that a lot of New Year's resolutions fail is because things start out way too aggressively and people aren't able to sustain their efforts for the time, and then they burn out or they overindulge in food and then they feel like they've failed and then they quit. So start small, build habits. Maybe start with two or three training days and a small change to your diet. And if you can make that stick for 4 to 6 weeks, then perhaps you can make it a little bit more aggressive. That's my advice there. All right, so we're going to get into the questions now. So I put a little questions box in my Instagram story a couple of days ago saying that I was going to do this solo podcast. And the first one I got was from Lorenzo, gym member, and he said, yes, the schizophrenic episode. So hopefully this doesn't sound like a crazy person, or at least doesn't devolve into a crazy person's ramblings by the end of it. But I thought that was very funny, and I thought that should have been mentioned, and shout out to Lorenzo. So first question from a client of mine, Dulana DK. He asked me 3 exercises you think are dog water. So I presume dog water means shit. And I actually don't think that any exercise is inherently shit. I think there are bad applications for exercises. I think there are bad programming strategies for certain exercises. For example, like you're not going to program 5 sets of 20 on deadlifts. That would just be insane. Likewise, you wouldn't program 5 singles on lateral raises. I think that's also insane. But I'm going to answer this question for the 3 exercises that I personally hate doing. Number 1, by an absolute landslide, is front squats. Just uncomfortable garbage. I reckon my front squat max is like 30% of my back squat max. Makes me feel weak, makes me feel immobile and shit, and I hate them. Number 2, and this is mostly because of my shoulder injury troubles that I've had over the last few years, is dips. Feel like shit, don't like them, hurt my shoulder. And the last one, probably to absolutely no one's surprise, is sumo deadlifts. Again, feel like shit, feel weak. There you go. That's my 3 least favorite exercises personally. Also from Dulana is tips to create a successful online coaching service. Now, I think the first thing here is you need to actually have a good knowledge and a good understanding of training, programming, anatomy, biomechanics, nutrition, blah, 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 all the stuff, psychology, all the stuff that goes into coaching. You actually have to have good knowledge. Can't provide a good service without good information, without good guidance, without good communication. So I think that's imperative. There are a lot of people who start out with their coaching career as online coaches, and I think that's a bit of a mistake as well, because I think the amount that you can learn by working with people in person is extremely, extremely invaluable. And, just when you see people do hundreds and hundreds of lifts in front of you every day, 30, 40 hours a week of personal training or in-person strength coaching, it really does broaden the amount of solutions you can find for different issues and different problems. And if you go into an online coaching job or you start an online coaching business and you've got years of practice with people in person, you're already going to have solutions for these people who see you online. And it is a little bit harder to get these things across immediately in an online capacity compared to in an in-person capacity. And once you've trialed a whole bunch of stuff in person, it's a lot easier to come to your solution online if you've already done it a million times before. So that's the first thing, knowledge. Second thing, in-person experience, I think. The third thing is deciding on what systems you're going to use and then creating and building those systems. So are you going to use My Strength Book, an app which sort of houses the whole thing and does it all for you? And then you need to obviously learn how to use that. Or are you going to use Google Sheets to build out your programs? And then you got to learn how to use that. And then you got to build templates, and you got to sort of learn how to use formulas and all those kind of things. How are you going to do your communication? Are you going to use Loom? Are you going to use Slack or Facebook Messenger or some other app service for messaging, WhatsApp, whatever. You need to decide on those things. And then you need to get proficient in those things. You need to learn how to use the different functions. You need to learn what the limitations of, the particular app you are using is compared to other stuff. And obviously that will help you decide which way you go with it. And the last one is being transparent around your expectations. And in particular, this means communication stuff. So, what does your service look like to the customer? Are you talking to them every week? Are you talking to them every month? Are you talking to them after all of their sessions? Are you updating their program every week? Are you updating their program every month? Are you doing block by block? How does this look? And it has to be clear that the client understands what service they're getting. And that's kind of it. Those things will help you build an online service, but you can't do all that stuff without the knowledge, without the experience. Actually, I guess the last thing here is learning how to build relationships with people. This is obviously harder to do online than it is in person, because you can't quite read people's body language online. You can't quite read people's sort of demeanor and their voice and all that kind of stuff online as much as you can in person. So if you are someone who is good at building relationships and those kind of things, that's going to be a big benefit for you, because coaching is really about building relationships and learning how to read people. And in order to get the most out of them, you need to understand what makes them tick, and you need to learn about their lives. You need to actually care about their lives and stuff like that. So that's the final tip. One last question from DK. If you could go back and change something about your coaching, what would you do? I had to actually think long and hard about this, because I've done so much stupid shit in my coaching career, and whiting from bad advice around technique or bad programming strategies. I think you actually learn a lot about yourself, and you learn a lot about coaching from making mistakes and going back and being honest with your situation and evaluating your situation and thinking, okay, this went wrong. Why did it go wrong? Maybe you tried some new approach. It wasn't successful. Now maybe you won't try that approach again. That's just a really obvious example. But I actually think this kind of stuff, making those kind of mistakes, those sort of smaller detail programming style mistakes, are actually good as a young coach, because you start to refine your own system. You start to develop, what your programming strategy looks like that works well for you, what type of technical model you like to use for the different lifts, what kind of communication style you like to use for different people. That can actually help you be a better coach. So I don't regret any of those things. The thing that I do regret is not meeting people where they're at with their current situation. And in particular, people who weren't quite keen on doing competition, and me sort of pushing them in that direction when they weren't quite keen on it. And in a few instances, it's made people fall out of love with lifting, which is disappointing, because they came to me because they love lifting and I kind of drove them out of it, which is really disappointing. So I definitely regret that. And, if any young coaches are listening to this, try not to make everyone like you. And, when I was younger, I was very, very invested in competing, and everything that I did in the gym and, around my training, nutrition, was geared around being a really good powerlifter. And it didn't quite make sense to me when people would live life in a different way, or they would approach training a little bit differently. And it was very hard for me to even contextualize that people would do this like socially or as a hobby. Whereas for me, it was such a competitive endeavor. And I, by my own stupidity or my own ignorance, forced people to do the things that I would have wanted to do in their situation, rather than me actually assessing their situation and coming up with a solution for them to get the most out of this sport, which is the key. Okay, next question is from Steph Lara. What are some of the challenges you find in juggling parenthood and lifting? So the biggest one is managing your time. And without Chrissy, I would be fucked, because she is like master planner and I am shitful. So thank you, Chrissy. Been very lucky to have someone so organized because I'm not. But I think the biggest thing is like getting a schedule down, and it's hard to block out big chunks of the day to train because you don't have that luxury anymore. So oftentimes it's meant shortening up my sessions or resting a lot less, or pairing up exercises so that I get stuff done quicker. Because sometimes, like today, for instance, I had 45 minutes to train, and I had squats, and I had a full lower body session after it. And in the past, I would have literally only done my squats in 45 minutes, whereas I did my squats plus 4 accessories all done in 45 minutes. And it doesn't seem like you could do this from like the classic powerlifter standpoint of I train for 3 hours and literally you fuck around for 70% of it. But you honestly really can get a lot done in a short period of time if you manage your time. And I've had to learn this from Chrissy because she is like the master of this with her own training. Like she trains so hard, even throughout pregnancy. And she gets so much done in such a short time. So obviously thankful for that. The other challenge is sometimes you just have to do the parent thing and not train. And that's hard for a lot of people to come to terms with, because for a huge part of their life, training has been such a big thing. But now it can not possibly be the number one priority because you have a family. Unless you're a shit dad and, you put training before your family, which you shouldn't. Sometimes you're just going to have to drop what you're doing and skip your accessories or miss a session or miss a training week if that's what you need, if you have a sick kid. But yeah, usually there should be time for you to get your training in if you're organized enough, if you're happy to sacrifice some things in terms of your rest periods, or you're happy to sacrifice the number of days you train and those kind of things. But the big key here is like being willing to put yourself second, because that's what parenting is, you're no longer the most important thing in the house. You've got to keep this little child alive, or you've got to entertain a toddler in our case. And sometimes that means not doing an hour of squatting. Next question. Rory Davison. What are the best snacks for bulking? So I should have actually asked you two guys this. I got 2 great snackers in the room with me, Luke and Chris. We could get you on the mic, Luke. Luke says a tub of Nutella and a spoon. It's pretty good. Now I've written a couple notes down here. The key really is stuff that is easy for you to eat. So there's a lot of stuff that's really a high calorie, but doesn't necessarily sit well with people. So this has to be in like an individual basis type of deal, where you think about stuff that you enjoy eating in big quantities, because those are going to be the ones that are going to be good decisions for you. Some ones I've written down that have helped me. Chocolate milk is a great one. It's got a lot of protein in it. It's got some nutrients in it. Really high calorie. Cereal is great, particularly stuff like Wheat Bix Bites, Nutri-Grain, Cocoa Pops. Well, those are the ones I like. Whatever cereal you like really is going to be very high in carbs, very easy to eat. Pair that with some high protein milk and you've got 30 or 40 grams of protein as well. Gatorade while you train is a big one. Swap out your water for Gatorade. Get in 35 to 50 grams of carbs, with 600 mils to a liter of water. That's an easy one to add in. I think an underrated one, and rather than thinking about like getting your calories from snacks, is actually just beefing up your meals a little bit. So you can substitute, fattier cuts of meat for leaner cuts of meat. You can swap out, wholemeal pasta for white pasta, or wholemeal bread for white bread, which is just easier to eat in higher quantities. You can add carb sources to your meals. So if you have a curry with rice, you just add an extra 50% of rice. If you have eggs on toast, you just add an extra piece of toast and an extra egg. So adding it up throughout the day in portion sizes, as opposed to thinking about doing it all at once. And what was the other one I had written down? I think that was it. So yeah. Oh, add cheese and sauce to everything because sauce and cheese go with everything. So put some cheese and sauce on your food. Next question. Claudia O'Shea. What are your lifetime powerlifting goals? So I was actually thinking about this recently. So I am in my 11th year of competing this year, which is pretty long. So go me for sticking it out. But I was thinking about it. I started as a junior and I want to continue all the way until I'm a Masters 1 and all the way until I'm in the Masters 2. So I have another 18 years to get to Masters 2. So that's my goal for now, is to lift long enough to be a Masters 2. So another 18 years of competing. That will be the year that I turned 50 in, what year is that? 2042. So keep lifting until I'm 50, basically. Keep competing until I'm 50. And then in terms of numbers I want to hit, I probably won't do this when I'm 50. I'm probably going to do this when I'm like 37 or something, and then I'll start to decline probably. But I want to squat 300, I want to bench 180, and I want to deadlift 320. So add those all up, 800 kilos, nice round number. Who knows if I'll ever get there, but it's nice to set the bar quite high. Also from Claudia O'Shea, what are the best and worst parts of your job? So the best part of my job is that I get to do shit like this. I get to hang out with my friends and teach them how to lift weights. I get to talk to people about their lives, and I get to build relationships with people who I like. And all of that basically means that I never really feel like I'm working, or I never really feel like my job is like a quote unquote real job. And whenever I meet parents like at swim class or whatever activities Summer does, they always ask me what I do and like how am I able to be there in the middle of the day, because I'm usually the only dad at these things. And I'm like, oh, I don't have a real job. That's what I always say to them. So I don't feel like I really have a real job. I feel like my job is super fun and interesting and engaging, and I really like it. And all of that, the best actual part is seeing them hit results, particularly on the platform, when they hit a third squat, third bench, third deadlift, and it's a big PB, and they've got that big smile on their face, and they come and they give you a hug. That's the actual best thing. The worst thing is when you struggle to crack someone's plateaus and you bang your head against a wall for months and months and months, or potentially even years in your case, Chris, and you just don't know where to go from here, and it can be really, really frustrating. And I guess majority of the time you eventually get through and you break through that wall. And that's, again, that's on the best list, is when you finally break through one of those plateaus. But the worst is certainly when you're in the middle of that plateau and you're not quite sure when you're going to get out of it. All right. From Matt Cunningham, can you discuss the future of Australian powerlifting with APA? So currently there's some information coming out, and I'm not going to discuss anything on here because it's not straight from the horse's mouth, and I would prefer to not say anything that's not quite confirmed or anything that's maybe a little bit incorrect, because I don't want to get people's hopes up if I am wrong. So I won't delve too much into it now, but I am planning on getting a couple of people who are board members / more highly involved than I am on the podcast in a few weeks to actually discuss all of this stuff. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Hopefully we can get that recorded sometime in January and get it released sometime in January. So look out for that. Next question from Thomas Lilly. What is one thing you wish all coaches knew and or did? So I'm going to say new. I wish all coaches understood the impact of their words. Now, I can talk from personal experience here with someone who rhymes with Bobbert Tilks, talking to me about a lot of people in the untested side, or coaches in the untested side, or lifters in the untested side. And some of the things that he would say about these people, and people who are more gullible than I am, or people who are more easily influenced than I am, like they believe everything that they hear from someone in that position who's quite high up, who's quite an influential person, or at least he was an influential person. Not so much anymore, thankfully. So yeah, I wish they understood the impact of their words. And that can be even a small thing, such as, the way that you talk to your clients. And Thomas, you had a video on this recently about, don't be a dick to your clients, because you never know what they're going through. You never know how your words are going to impact them. And you should be a lot more careful about the language you use, the choice of words, and those kind of things, because you can really affect someone's life in a positive way as a coach. Like, you can seriously change people's lives, or you can do the other way around as well. So be aware of the impact of your words. Be aware of how much of a voice you do have as someone's coach, because you are an authority. You are someone that they trust and they look up to, and it's important that you're aware of that. Next question from Thomas Bryant. What do you think helped give you a name in the industry? The biggest thing for me was when I got a job at Lyft. That was the biggest thing. Obviously, it was widely regarded as one of the best gyms in Australia. We had a powerlifting club. We ran meets. And this meant that I was immediately thrust into a position where I was someone important. And, I was the one hosting the comps. I was the one in charge of quite a big group of people who were training under us. And this was something that gained me notoriety quite quickly. But I think the other thing was, competing at a high level, competing internationally, which I did about a year before I started working at Lyft. That helped me gain some notoriety and get my name out there in the industry a little bit. But yeah, I think Lyft was the biggest thing. And what Lyft gave me was sort of a platform to run comps, to run referee clinics, to run courses. And, I was helping out with all of that stuff. And that just meant that I was more visible more often for more people, which, when you're someone who is constantly there and constantly reminding, oh, hey, this guy's a powerlifting coach. Hey, this guy's a meet director. Hey, this guy's a referee. Hey, this guy's a competitor. When you're currently in people's eyesight and you're consistently in people's eyesight and people are seeing you do these things, you're on their mind, and you're now an option as a coach. You're now someone who's, just considered a notable person in powerlifting. So I think those are the biggest things. Next question from Jesse Tookus. How often does someone live up to their potential in powerlifting? Now, this is completely theoretical, because you never know what someone's potential is until, you'll literally never know what someone's potential is, because we're not like robots, or we're not like a video game where you can put 100% of input into someone and then, figure out what the output is, because people don't ever actually put in 100%, like very rarely. And, it's impossible to know whether someone would continue progressing. People go through plateaus and then they even regress before they progress again. And sometimes people will fall out of the sport before they get to that next uptick. So it's hard to really know how many people like fully peak as powerlifters. I think the one time you can kind of say that someone has peaked is if they've been lifting for like multiple decades and they, reach a peak total, or they reach a PB total in their late 40s or early 50s after 30 years of competing. And then their numbers start to dip. You could probably say, hey, okay, they've actually peaked. But even in that scenario, you won't know if someone's fully put in all the effort they possibly could have throughout those 30 years. And maybe they'd be even higher if they had put in even a little bit more effort, or maybe they could have gone up a weight class and done even better, or maybe they could have gone down weight class and done even better. And, this is all completely hypothetical. So the answer is, how often does someone live up to their potential? I have no idea. Next question from Jesse. Will Alex Hayes ever open up a gym? No. All right. And the final question from Eldwin Sanantha. What makes a coachable athlete? Now, this is something that doesn't require any particular genetic gifts, doesn't require any particular level of talent. These are things that anyone is capable of, and anyone can do. Literally everyone who's listening to this and every single powerlifter on the planet has the potential to be coachable. Not every powerlifter on the planet has the potential to be a world champion. Not every powerlifter on the planet has the potential to break a world record, unless you go to one of those stupid federations with like 5 lifters, like the WDFPF. Maybe everyone can break a record in that federation. But that's besides the point. Everyone has the ability to be coachable. And it's all about sort of being present in the moment, being switched on, and being aware of what's going on, and thinking about where your body is in space and what you're doing mentally, and little routine things like that. It's being open to criticism, being okay with someone suggesting that you do something differently, even if something has worked well for you in the past. Being willing to accept that you've hired this coach because they may have a better solution, and they may be able to get you working something even better than it's currently worked. It's being diligent in your communication, being open and being honest in your communication, and letting someone know not just when things go poorly, but when things go well. And this is something that comes up really, really often. Is lifters are really, really happy to report to their coach when things are going well, and they'll send updates immediately after training, and it'll be all of this information about how great it's all been. And then out of nowhere, you won't hear from them for a few days, and they'll give you a message like, "Oh, everything's in the toilet," and my training for the last few days sucked, and they won't give you the full story about why. And these are things that can help you be coached, which are things that make you coachable. Is being honest about maybe one of your sessions was bad because you had a bad night's sleep, or you rolled your ankle playing basketball, but they divulge that information because they only want to catastrophize things when they go negatively. So yeah, being honest about what's actually going on in your situation. Be honest with your communication. Not just when things are going well, not just when things are going bad, but all the time. And I think when you do it like that, when you're actually really honest about the communication all the time, the coach gets a better understanding of sort of where your like normal is, or where your like baseline, where your like 5 out of 10 is. And I think that's really important as well. If you like over catastrophize the bad stuff and you sort of underplay the good stuff, they might view you differently to what's actually going on in your head. And I think that's actually an important thing, is to try and like be completely honest about how you're feeling the whole way, so the coach has an idea of how you're feeling the whole way. Be honest about how hard you're working. Like, are you filling in your sheet, and are you doing your accessories to the actual programmed RPEs? Are you hitting all of your sets of your back offs? Like those little things, like filling in your sheet and updating, how things are going, are really important. And the final one is just continuing to show up. A lot of people will say like the hardest part of the training session is actually just walking in the door. And I think that's bullshit. But I also think it's somewhat true in that, like, a lot of times the way that you perceive a session is never what actually happens. And, we may go into a session expecting it to be like really shit, and we dread it. And we're just like the whole day, we're like, oh, this session's going to kick my ass. And then you get there and you start. And once you start, you realize, no, it's fine. Like everything's actually going to be okay. So yeah, continuing to show up even when you don't want to. And yeah. So thank you for listening. That was hopefully not a schizophrenic episode. And hopefully I did okay with my first ever solo. And my mouth is really dry now. So I'm going to head off. But hopefully we will have a guest in next week. I haven't got anyone planned. But hopefully I'll organize something in the next few days. Get a guest in and we'll talk to you next week. Ciao.